20 years ago, something happened that I will never forget. It was at my sister's wedding. Everyone was smiling, laughing, dancing, and eating fancy food. There were about 200 people in the big hall. The lights sparkled, music played, and my dad looked proud as he stood up and tapped his glass with a silver spoon. Before we start today's story, comment below where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you haven't already. You won't want to miss what's next. The room went quiet. Everyone turned to look at him. He smiled, holding his drink. Then he said something that changed my life forever. He said, "Evan is no longer my son. That was me. My name is Evan Mercer, and my dad just told the whole world I didn't belong to him anymore." Now, 20 years later, I'm sitting in a tall office building in Manhattan, New York City. The room smells like leather and paper. I'm sitting across from a lawyer who looks serious and quiet. On the shiny desk in front of me is a piece of paper, a check for $97 million. It has my name on it. The same man who said I was no longer his son has just left me everything he owned. All his money, all his houses, all his company shares, everything. My dad's name was Richard Mercer. He was a powerful man. He built a big company that made car parts. He was tough, proud, and never said sorry to anyone. When I was young, he told me I was a disappointment. He kicked me out of our family, told everyone I didn't exist, and made sure people thought he only had 2 children, not 3. And now that he's gone, he left me $97 million, 12 houses, and the company I once refused to take over. My sister Lila got $1. My brother Grant got $1. But me, the son who left home and became a small-town animal doctor, got it all. The lawyer handed me a sealed letter from my dad. It was written 6 months before he died, when he found out he was very sick. My hand shook as I held it because my father never wrote letters. He never said sorry. He never explained anything. Why would he leave everything to me? The son he said was dead to him. Why did he forgive me when he never forgave anyone? The answer, he said, was in that letter. And when I read it later, I understood something I had never understood before. That sometimes people who hurt us the most still love us in their own strange way. They just don't know how to show it until it's too late. For the past 20 years, I've lived in a small town in Oregon. It's far away from my hometown in Ohio. Almost as far as I could go without leaving the country. I work as a veterinarian, a doctor for animals. My life is quiet, calm, and simple. Every morning I wake up at 6 o'clock. I make a cup of coffee in my old chip mug. Then I walk downstairs to my clinic. I live right above it, so I just have to go down 1 flight of stairs to start my day. At 7 o'clock, I saw my first patient, maybe a border collie with a hurt leg. By noon, I'm talking to Mrs. Klein about her cat that needs insulin shots. In the evening, I might do surgery on a dog that ate something it shouldn't have. It's busy, but it's peaceful. It's not fancy, but it's mine. My receptionist, Sophie, says I'm the calmest vet she's ever worked with. "Nothing rattles you," she always says with a laugh. Not angry dogs, not crying pet owners, not even that huge pig someone brought in last month. She doesn't know that this calmness didn't come easy. It took me years to build. It came from heartbreak, pain, and learning to stay still when everything around me fell apart. I built strong walls inside me, walls that stopped me from feeling too much. I learned to stay quiet, to be steady, to keep my heart safe. 25 years ago, my life was completely different. Back then, I was supposed to be the future king of my father's company, Mercer Manufacturing. It made car parts, brake pads, engines, and shiny metal things I didn't really care about. Dad started it in a garage in 1975 with just $200 and an idea for a better brake pad. By the time I was in high school, he had 4 big factories and 3,000 workers. Everyone in our town knew our name. We had money, fame, and respect. We gave money to hospitals, schools, and charities. People looked at us like royalty. And I was supposed to be the prince, the one who would take over one day. Dad had my whole life planned out. I would go to Wharton School like my sister Lila, then to Harvard for an MBA. Then I would work for a big company, and after that, I would come home and take charge of Mercer Manufacturing. When I was 16, Dad used to walk with me through the noisy factory. The air smelled like oil and metal. He'd put his big hand on my shoulder and tell everyone, "This is my son, Evan. He's going to run this place one day." He said it with pride, but I felt sick every time. The factory smell made my stomach twist. The numbers and charts made my head hurt. I didn't want this life. I didn't care about machines. While Dad talked about profits, I secretly read books about animals under the dinner table. When he took me to boring business meetings, I stared out the window and watched birds, dreaming of being a vet. My brother Grant was the one who loved the company. He started working there at 14, sorting mail and learning every machine. He knew every worker's name and every process. He lived for the company, but he wasn't the oldest son. To Dad, that meant he could never be the boss. My sister Lila was also amazing. She finished Wharton at the top of her class. She knew everything about money and numbers. She helped Dad find ways to save millions, but she wasn't the oldest son either. So even though she was brilliant, Dad never saw her as his heir. And then there was Mom, Helen Mercer. She was kind, gentle, and loving, a school teacher who still smiled even when Dad yelled. She understood me better than anyone. When I was 12, I brought home a hurt raccoon. Dad wanted to call animal control. Mom helped me fix it in the garage. When I volunteered at the animal shelter, Dad said I was wasting time. Mom drove me there herself every Saturday. She used to whisper, "Follow your heart, Evan. Life's too short to live someone else's dream. Your father loves you. He just doesn't know how to love something he can't control." I believed her about following my heart, but I didn't believe that Dad loved me. I thought he couldn't love me because I wasn't like him. I was wrong, but I wouldn't learn that Thalen until it was too late. Until I was sitting in a lawyer's office with $97 million and a letter from a man who once destroyed me. It all started 25 years ago at my sister Lila's wedding in June 2004. It was supposed to be perfect, and in Dad's world, perfect meant expensive. The Columbus Country Club was covered in white roses and baby's breath. There were giant ice sculptures shaped like swans. A 12-piece band came all the way from New York. Dad spent $50,000 to make sure Lila had her fairy tale day. I was a groomsman in a fancy black tuxedo that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Even though things were bad between Dad and me, I was happy for Lila. She was marrying Elliot Harrington, her college sweetheart. He came from another rich Ohio family. Dad liked him because his family owned a chain of luxury car dealerships. It was like a business deal, but Lila really loved him, and that made me happy. The wedding ceremony was beautiful. Lila cried during her vows. Elliot's voice cracked when he promised to love her forever. Mom wiped her eyes with a white handkerchief from her own wedding 30 years earlier. Even Dad looked emotional, which was rare. Then came the reception, the big dinner and party. The band played songs. People laughed and danced. Everyone was happy. Then Dad stood up. He tapped his knife against his crystal glass. Clink, clink, clink. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "may I have your attention for the father of the bride's speech." The music stopped. The room went quiet. 200 faces turned to look at him. He smiled warmly at Lila. When Lila was 5, he said, "She told me she wanted to be a princess. I told her she already was one, and if she worked hard, she could become a queen." People laughed and clapped politely. He looked at Lila proudly. "Today," he said, "watching her marry Elliot, I see that queen. Lila has made me proud." Lila smiled, glowing, but then Dad's face changed. The warmth disappeared. His voice became cold and sharp. "Family is everything," he said slowly. "The Mercer name means something. It means honesty, tradition, and loyalty." He looked straight at me, and that's why, he said, "it breaks my heart to announce that as of today." He paused. Everyone stared. Evan is no longer part of this family. The room froze. The music stopped. My world ended. And that was the day my father erased me, the day everything began to fall apart. The band leader's hand stopped in the air above his shiny piano keys. Lila's big smile slowly disappeared. Mom's fancy glass slipped from her hand, and it crashed on the floor, making a loud sound that echoed around the room. Everyone froze and turned to look. Dad kept talking. His voice was sharp, cold, and loud enough for everyone to hear. "This morning," he said, "I found out something terrible. Evan has been hiding a big secret from me. He signed up for a school to become an animal doctor at Oregon State. He did this behind my back, behind all of our backs. After everything I did for him, after I spent 23 years getting him ready to take over my business. He wanted to play with animals instead of helping his family. Elliot's aunt was holding her small video camera, recording everything because she loved drama. Everyone knew this would be talked about in our town for years. "Richard, please," Mom said softly. She stood up, and her hands were shaking. "Not here. Not at Lila's wedding." Dad turned to her. His face looked hard like stone. "Sit down, Helen," he said. "You knew about this, didn't you? You helped him lie to me." Mom sat back down. Her face turned pale, and tears started running down her cheeks. Lila sat still in her wedding dress. Her pretty makeup ran down her face in black lines. My brother Grant stared down at his plate, pretending the food was suddenly the most interesting thing in the world. All 200 guests were frozen. No one dared to move. Forks hung in midair. Dad wasn't finished. He looked at me with eyes so full of anger I thought he might burst. "You are a disappointment, Evan. You threw away everything our family worked for. You don't deserve the Mercer name. You want to be around dogs all day? Fine. Do it without my name, without my money, and without my blessing. Get out now. Don't ever come back." I stood up slowly. My legs felt steady even though my heart was racing. I walked toward the microphone the band had used for songs earlier. The whole room was holding its breath. "Lila," I said, looking at my sister's sad face. "I'm sorry your special day got ruined. You look beautiful and Elliot is a lucky man." Then I looked around at everyone. "For what it's worth," I said, "I'd rather make my dad angry by following my dreams than make myself sad by living his." I walked out of the room, past the tall ice swans, past the big, expensive fountain, past all the things that were supposed to be part of my future life. I left that fancy wedding hall and didn't look back. I got into my small, beat-up car, the one Dad always said was an embarrassment, and drove away. I drove through the night, drinking cheap gas station coffee to stay awake. It took 17 hours to reach Oregon. I already knew where I was going. I had been accepted into the animal doctor school, veterinary school at Oregon State. I had already paid my first school fee with the money I earned from working summers at the animal shelter. Dad never knew any of that. I had learned to hide the things that really mattered to me. When I got to Corvallis, I had only $3,000. I found a tiny studio apartment above a Chinese restaurant. It always smelled like sesame oil. The walls were old, and there were mice running in the corners. The heater made loud, clanging noises all night long, and my window looked out over a dumpster. It was small and noisy, but it was mine, and that made it perfect. The first year was very, very hard. I had to study a lot, and I had to work to stay alive. I worked 3 jobs. Every morning from 4 to 7, I made coffee for teachers and workers who woke up early. In the evenings, I helped college students with their biology homework. I explained science to kids who just wanted to pass their tests. On weekends, I worked as a night guard at a medical building. I walked through dark halls with a flashlight, making sure no one broke in, while reading my big textbooks. Some nights, I went to bed hungry because I couldn't afford food. Some weeks, I had to choose between buying gas for my car or food for my stomach. I found all the club meetings on campus that gave free pizza and went to them, even if I didn't care about the clubs. I became very good at pretending to be interested in things just so I could eat. My classmates talked about skiing trips and vacations. I counted coins to see if I could afford day-old bread at the grocery store. But every time I wanted to quit, every time I thought about calling home, I remembered Dad's face at the wedding, the anger, the disgust, the way he said the word disappointment. That memory pushed me to keep going. It became fuel that kept me awake during long nights of studying. Mom tried to reach me through my old roommate, Ryan. She would call him every month, crying. She told him to tell me she loved me. She said she was proud of me. She said Dad would calm down soon. She begged me to call her or come home for Christmas or just send a letter. But I didn't. Not because I didn't care, but because I knew she was wrong. Dad's anger didn't go away. It turned into something hard and permanent. 5 years went by, then 10, then 15. The silence between us became part of our family. It sat like an invisible ghost at every birthday and every Christmas dinner. In 2008, I finished school and graduated with honors. I was now Dr. Evan Mercer, Doctor of Veterinary Medicine. When my diploma arrived in the mail, I hung it on the wall in my tiny apartment. Next to it, I hung a picture of the first dog I had ever saved. His name was Duke. He was a German Shepherd mix who had been hit by a car. Everyone thought he wouldn't make it, but I stayed with him for 2 days straight, watching his heartbeat and giving him medicine. When he finally walked out wagging his tail, I knew I had chosen the right path. 2 years later, in 2010, I got a small business loan, $40,000. To me, it felt like $40 million. I found an old animal clinic in Bend, Oregon. The building was dusty, the machines were old, and the walls needed painting. But it was in the perfect spot, close enough to Portland for special help, but far enough from Ohio that I'd never run into anyone from my past. I worked hard and built my clinic one pet at a time. People started to hear about the vet who stayed after hours for emergencies, who helped people pay in small amounts, and who kept a special fund for old people with sick pets. My clinic grew, and so did my heart, but I never got married. There were nice people like Jessica, the lady who sold medicine and always brought me coffee, and Carmen, another animal doctor who understood the long hours and the sad goodbyes. But I never let anyone get too close. I didn't want to talk about my family or about Ohio or about the father who never forgave me. My therapist, Dr. Reeves, told me I had trouble trusting people because my dad had hurt me. I told her I had trouble trusting people because sometimes the world really is that hard. Then, 3 weeks ago, my phone rang in the middle of the night. It was 2 a.m. The number said New York. I almost didn't answer, but something inside me said I should. "Is this Evan Mercer?" a man's voice asked. "Yes," I said, half asleep. "My name is Harrison Blackfield. I'm a lawyer from Blackfield, Russo, and Associates. I'm calling about your father's estate. Richard Mercer passed away yesterday. You need to come to New York." When I arrived, the law office smelled like leather and old books. The rugs were soft, the paintings looked real and expensive, and even the coffee cups looked like they belonged in a museum. The lawyer, Mr. Blackfield, wore a perfect gray suit. His hair was silver, his eyes sharp. He looked like someone who had seen many family fights before. "Before we start," he said, sitting behind a huge desk, "your brother and sister are not happy. They were here yesterday. Your brother shouted a lot. Your sister cried the whole time. Your mother said nothing." He handed me a thick piece of paper. "Your father's will is very unusual," he said. "He changed it 6 months ago after finding out he had heart disease. The doctor said he had 8 months to live. He made it 6. I looked at the paper. The date said January 15th, 2025. I read the first page again and again, trying to make sense of it. To my son, Grant Mercer, who did everything I said but never had one idea of his own. $1. I looked up at the lawyer. He nodded, telling me to keep reading. To my daughter, Lila Mercer Harrington, who chose her husband's family instead of ours, $1. My hands were shaking now. To my wife, Helen, who helped my son lie to me. The house and her savings, nothing more. Then I read the part that made my heart stop. To my son, Evan Mercer, everything else. The paper listed everything. The company is worth $60 million. The 12 houses are worth $20 million. The investment accounts for $17 million more. The art, the cars, the vacation homes, together worth $97 million. "This can't be real," I whispered. He hated me. He told everyone I was dead to him. "There's one more thing," the lawyer said quietly. He handed me a sealed envelope. My name was written on it in Dad's sharp handwriting. "He told me to give this to you personally," the lawyer said. I held the letter in my hand and felt my whole past rise up again. The wedding, the shouting, the silence, the years of running. And for the first time in a very long time, I didn't know what to do next. He spent 3 long hours in his office writing a letter, even though his heart was hurting badly. He was dying, but he didn't want to go to the hospital until he finished what he needed to say. When I opened the envelope later, my hands are shaking. Inside was 1 page filled with my father's handwriting. The moment I saw it, I knew this was important. The letter said, "Evan, I've been very sick for 6 months. When you know your time is almost over, your mind becomes clear. You finally understand things you couldn't before. And now I understand something I should have seen 20 years ago. You were right. At Lila's wedding, when you stood up and told me I was wrong, you were right. I built a huge company. I made a lot of money. People respected me. But in doing that, I lost something important, my heart and my soul. I turned your brother Grant into someone who always said yes to me. He never argued, never disagreed, and never became his own person. Your sister Lila left our family behind when she married Elliot. She joined his rich family's company and forgot everything I taught her. And your mother, I was angry at her because she helped you apply to veterinary school. But now I see she was only protecting you from me, and she was right to do it. But you, Evan, you were different. You were brave. You stood up to me in front of 200 people. You walked away from millions of dollars just to stay true to your dreams. You lived in your car while saving sick and hurt animals. You ate cheap noodles instead of begging me for help. I hired people to watch you every year. I needed to know how you were doing. I know about the German Shepherd you rescued, about the payment plans you made for poor pet owners, and about how you spent your last $20 on medicine for a stray cat instead of food for yourself. You became the man I always said I was, but wasn't. While I only talked about honesty and sacrifice, you actually lived with honesty and made real sacrifices. While I built a fortune, you built a good life. The company needs someone strong, honest, and brave to lead it. Someone who won't trade kindness for money. That person is not Grant or Lila. It's you. I'm sorry it took me dying to finally tell you this. I'm sorry for stealing 20 years from us. I'm sorry for ruining your sister's wedding, breaking your mother's heart, and hurting you. You asked for nothing, but you deserve everything. So now, everything I have will be yours. Your father, whether you want me or not, Richard Mercer. P.S. There's a 7-month-old German Shepherd puppy at the Columbus shelter. His hip is bad, and they plan to put him down on Tuesday if no one adopts him. Please take him. Consider it my last request. When I finished reading, the tears came, 20 years worth of tears. They fell onto the paper and made the words blurry. I sat in the lawyer's office for an hour, reading the letter over and over until I couldn't see the ink anymore. Mr. Harrison Blackfield, my father's lawyer, quietly pushed a box of tissues across the table. Then he left the room to give me some privacy. Later, he told me he had seen many sad moments in his career, but never one like this. Never father saying sorry through his will. When I finally stopped crying, he came back with more papers for me to sign. There were documents to fill out, property to transfer, and company papers to approve. He told me my brother and sister had already filed a complaint to stop the inheritance, but he said they won't win. Your father was a sound mind. 3 doctors and 1 psychiatrist all said he knew exactly what he was doing. Then he looked at me and asked gently, "So what will you do now, Evan?" I thought about my small animal clinic back in Oregon, my quiet apartment above it, the cats and dogs I helped every day, my simple life. Then I thought about $97 million and what that could mean, not for me, but for all the animals and people who needed help. For every shelter, every poor pet owner, every young vet drowning in student debt. I wiped my face and said, "First, I'm going to Columbus to adopt a German Shepherd." That was 3 weeks ago. Now that same German Shepherd, a scruffy 7-month-old with 1 floppy ear, is sleeping at my feet as I write this. I named him Richard after my dad. My therapist says that name choice means something deep, but I just think the puppy looks like Richard. His hip surgery went perfectly. He's already learned that my office chair is really his chair, and he kindly lets me borrow it. I'm not selling my dad's company. Not yet. Instead, I'm changing it completely. Mercer Manufacturing won't make car parts anymore. It will make things for animals like medical tools for small clinics, prosthetic legs for injured dogs, and machines that help doctors find illnesses faster and cheaper. At first, the engineers thought I was crazy, but then I showed them the research, and they realized that helping animals can also make a good business. Grant quit the next day. He sent me a 2-word text that wasn't very nice. Lila's lawyers keep calling, but I don't answer. Her husband, Elliot, says they deserve half of everything because family loyalty should come first. Funny, because she didn't think about family when she chose his family over ours. Mom has moved in with me for now. Not in the big mansion Dad left. I'm turning that into a veterinary teaching hospital, but in a normal house I bought near the company. She cries a lot, but she also smiles when she sees me sitting at Dad's old desk. It's covered in animal books now instead of car magazines. He was so stubborn, she said last night while cooking dinner. The first home-cooked meal I've had in 20 years. You both were. 20 years of silence because neither of you would pick up the phone. He'd ask about you sometimes, especially after a few drinks. I'd lie and say I didn't know anything. Even when Ryan told me about your graduation, your clinic, your success, I didn't tell him. I could have called. I could have tried to fix things. Pride costs too much, Evan. We both paid for it. 20 years of missed birthdays, Christmases, and family dinners. 20 years of him slowly dying from a bad heart while I was out there saving animals with good hearts. The irony isn't lost on me. I still have my clinic in Oregon. I hired 2 new veterinarians, Dr. Jessica Martinez and Dr. Kevin Chun. They're young, kind, and buried in student loans. I secretly paid off those loans. They think it was an anonymous gift. No one there knows that their quiet boss is now worth $97 million, and I plan to keep it that way. Dad was wrong about me at Lila's wedding. I wasn't disappointed, but I was wrong about him too. He wasn't only a cold businessman who kicked his son out. He was also the man who checked on me for 20 years, who changed his will when his heart was failing, who used his last moments to make things right in the only way he knew how, through a big, dramatic gesture that made the news all over Ohio. The letter sits framed on my desk now. Next to it is a photo from Lila's wedding, the last one of all of us together. In the picture, we're smiling, unaware that everything was about to fall apart. Sometimes I stare at it and wonder what could have been different. If Dad had been less proud, if I had been less stubborn, if we had forgiven each other sooner. But here's what I've learned. Forgiveness doesn't always happen when people are still alive. Sometimes it comes in a letter written by a dying man. Sometimes it comes in the surprise of a will. Sometimes it comes in the form of a dog, a 7-month-old German Shepherd with a bad hip who teaches you that healing can happen even after many years of pain. The money will do good things. The company will change lives. The houses and land will become animal hospitals and shelters. But the real gift wasn't the $97 million. The real gift was a lesson written with tears on fancy paper. That love doesn't always look like approval. That respect sometimes means letting go. And that our biggest hurts can become the strongest parts of who we are. Richard the puppy just woke up. His tail is wagging, ready for his afternoon walk. He doesn't know he's named after a complicated man who took 20 years to say 3 simple words. I was wrong. But maybe that's okay, because the best apologies aren't said, they're lived. And with $97 million in a company that now helps animals, I plan to live one amazing apology for both of us. If this story moved you, please subscribe for more kind and powerful stories. Watch our next video for another unforgettable journey. And share this story with someone who needs it today.